Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today on our summer mini-series, we will be discussing Deadpool and dark romance. But before we get into it, allow me to introduce myself and my co-host. I'm Mariah. You can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
I'm Kristen. You can find me at KRXXTXN on all social media platforms.
Also, our podcast has adopted a Palestinian family that needs assistance in Gaza, so if you follow the link at the top of the description of this episode, you can donate directly towards their cause. It'd be greatly appreciated.
Yes.
So, this is probably like the most contemporary thing that we have discussed so far on the mini podcast, and I imagine most people who are listening to this have seen it, but perhaps they haven't. There was a video going around on TikTok by a man named Wade Wilson, which is why I said Deadpool. We both genuinely thought that it was just people
You
saying
don't even
that,
know
like
who
trying
Wade
to fan
Wilson
cam.
was, so go
Well,
ahead
I
and
know
run
who
it.
Wade Wilson
I
is.
said Wade Wilson,
Regardless,
and you go, yeah, and I'm like Deadpool, and you go, what?
it took me a second to realize that that was what his name was because I didn't look at what his legal name was. I was like, there's no way.
I know, that's why I was confused. I was like, oh, are they just like calling him Deadpool because he's supposed to be like dark and sort of like edgy? But no, this guy's
That's
just
what
a
I thought
Nazi.
too. Yeah,
Oh,
so
I just want to say
Wade
this was
Wilson.
on Mariah's For You page, if that says anything about Mariah's For You page. Not my For You page, Mariah's
I
For
get
You page.
all kinds of stuff because we talk about everything
Sure,
on,
whatever your excuse
yeah,
is. Not
on the
whatever books you're
podcast.
reading.
Definitely. I do get like the dark romance, like the crazy dark romance books because I think they're good for the podcast, but then trying to like convince Kristen to read one of them is impossible. But we're just going to talk about Wade Wilson today. He was convicted June 24th of 2024 for the following charges: 2 counts of first-degree murder for Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, first-degree murder, grand theft, battery, burglary, and petty theft. Why is this relevant? Why are we even discussing this, right? There was a video that was going around. There were several, but the one that I had saw, which I'm going to insert into this video,
Is a fan
features
cam.
it is like low-key a fan cam, which features Wade Wilson at his quote-unquote death penalty phase. Which on June 25th, which was the day it got posted, the jury in Wilson's trial recommended he receive the death penalty for each of the murders. Jurors who had the option of recommending life without parole or death voted 9-3 and 10-2 for death. It will be up to the judge to impose the death sentence July 23rd of 2024. And the source will be at the top of the description for the news press article that I just quoted. But so this is the clip, right? You see him come in, they're talking about his sentence. The comment section of this video was insane. I have never seen anything like this, nor did I ever think it would ever come to this degree.
Well, because you look at the way that some women, not to generalize all women or all women on the dark romance side or anything like that of TikTok or Book Talk specifically, but I feel as if we may have lost the plot a little bit. Because the reason why, at least as anybody knows who's listened to our episodes on dark romances, we've done a handful, like 3 or 4, I would say, of dark romances we've done episodes on. I am never personally a big fan of them, which is fine. That's my taste. I like different types of romances. That I'm not making fun of anybody that loves Haunting Adeline. I will make fun of you that like Credence specifically, but other than that, like I understand that the idea that you like about this is that a fictional man is like crazy and evil, but not to you, is sort of like I guess the inherent vibe people like to pull out and extract that feeling from, which is fine whenever you remember that it's fictional. But then whenever you actually see a case in real life where a man is actively has murdered 2 women, has swastika tattoos on his face, not even like hidden under his sleeves, on his head he has a swastika tattoo, inheriting, like showing that he is a white supremacist. We are absolutely insane that there's people in the comments that are thirsting over this man when he should get sent straight to the gulag. Like, I don't understand how people find this attractive.
Which, when I had originally saw it, it was all the comments. Since then, right, which it's been what, 5 days?
It's been a
There has
couple
been
days, yeah.
another 10,000 comments, so a lot of those original comments have gotten suppressed. So there's about
Thank God.
25,000 comments on that, and I'll include a screen recording from another creator that'll get clipped into here so you can see them, because I wish I would have screenshotted it because now I can't find any of them, and hopefully the original creator ended up like nuking it or deleting it. It was so bad though. And we've discussed how like dark romance and some of this like non-con dubious consent, like these themes can be a vehicle for people to explore who have trauma in a safe way, to be able to like, like visualize that, work through it. Like there is some, I guess, therapeutic aspects to dark romance, um, of these problematic tropes. However, people who do not have this trauma are reading this genre of quote unquote dark romance, which we're going to be real, it's more often than not like horror erotica. And they are unironically being like, oh, well, if it was me in this situation, I probably would have died too, just because he's a conventionally attractive white man that's 6'6".
Does his height really have anything to do with the
I
attractiveness?
don't know. I saw it in the comment section. People were like, "Oh my god, he's 6'6". I was like,
Who
"Do
cares?
you have worms for brains?"
I mean, that's the thing is that, like, this man killed 2 people, and I think that's one thing where, at least with maybe not necessarily, like, social media, but, like, media in general and stuff like that, is how much people have become desensitized to violence, where,
Yeah, because their deaths were not like some.
like, it
No,
was
no,
not
no.
just
Like
like they went to sleep and died, no, like, they were ran over by his car.
the first lady, they had like a one night stand, and then he strangled her to death. Then he found the other lady, and he
Ran her
strangled her
over.
again in the car. And then because she wasn't dead when she had like he was going to pull her out of the car, ran her over until quote unquote from his father's mouth. This was the quote that he said immediately after that. He wanted her to look like spaghetti. That's how many times he ran her over. This is a blatant example of like violent misogyny.
To
It
towards
is
women. Yeah.
crazy. It's like
And the
this was
fact
not
that
just a one-off. Like he had so much internalized shit against women that he violently took it out on these two poor women that did not deserve this. But
no.
he's hot. He's got tattoos. He's hot. Oh my god, he's in a
I don't even
full-on
think
Vic
people realize that,
uniform.
like, the tattoo on his head were literal Nazi symbols too. Like, he's literally, I don't know if you have to bleep Nazi, but he's literally like a white supremacist. Like, not even like, which I'm assuming a lot of the women that were probably commenting this were white women specifically, because I can't imagine women of color or black women and stuff seeing these violent cases of men and stuff like that, because like white men inherently attack like people, women of color, more than they attack white women, and they're inherently more violent to those. I cannot imagine any like woman of color or black woman like seeing this and then inherently like romanticizing it or sexualizing this.
Because like safety, right? Like you'd have to be
Yeah.
concerned about this. And these are things that I know, like as like white folk, we still have to be careful about who we date, right?
Mhm.
Because like men are dangerous. But once we take into consideration like an intersectional framework, we have to understand like there's layers to safety.
Yes.
So like people who are of different marginalized communities have to take those into consideration. So obviously like privileged white women who are in these like dark romance communities,
Mhm.
they are just completely lacking any sense of like they just need to go fucking touch grass. Like get
I think
grounded. You're
maybe the
lost.
problem is this is like obviously a generalization, but I noticed that a lot, and I don't know if you're a lot more on dark book talk, romance, whatever, dark romance, TikTok, whatever you want to call it. But a lot of these women are white, and I'm assuming that because of that, they're usually inherently like their husbands or their boyfriend is a white man and stuff like that. And we know just like the way that, like, white culture is and things like that, how white men are inherently more violent and inherently, like, less loving partners and things like that. We're obviously not saying, like, all like white men are like that and stuff like that, but at least from like my idea is that like the women like these books and why romance is such a popular genre, especially with like women between like their like 18 and probably 45. I would say like romance is probably one of the most popular genres, and it's a genre that is written by women, is because the men within the stories actually care about the woman that they're with and not just with her to continue their bloodline or whatever it is they do, or to just have control over someone else that does all of their stuff that their mother did for them.
Exactly. Like you're able to that's what makes the fantasy like so how do we want to word it? Like immersive? Because like it's
Uh,
something
it,
that you can't
it makes
access
you feel
generally in society.
appreciated. It makes you feel like as a woman that like, oh, my only job is not to have babies, clean the house, and provide half of my income to the family or whatever. Like, it's actually women, I think, inherently enjoy romance books, and I think they have been. I mean, you can look in the past, like how popular romance has been over the past, like since the 70s and the 50s and the 60s, whenever like domestic abuse was at an all-time high and things like that. And there's a reason why a lot of these dark romances do not center around like police romances either. Like, that's something that I feel like you would think because, like, inherently, like, the police abuse their wives, you know? And I think that's why a lot of the dark romance people are usually like, not necessarily that I think anybody in dark romance is, like, a comrade or that writes dark romance understands, like, anything like that, but they are usually inherently critical of the police, and they should be because we know, like, so much things of the corrupt work of the police and things like that. And so I think a lot of the time where we know as a fact 40% of like police officers beat their wives, you know? And so you think
And this
about
is just like the women that have acknowledged
come
that like their
out.
partner
Yes.
has like abused them in some way, shape, or form. Because a lot of people don't know how encompassing the term abuse really is. And I would be
Yes.
willing to go on a limb here and take the leap and say that it's a lot higher than 40%. I would say
I
it was
would
like
agree
60
with
or
that
70%.
because the thing is that women already feel less likely to report any abuse that happens to them. Statistically, we know that, like how many percentages of rapes don't even get reported and things like that. And not to mention the person that you're supposed to be reporting these the harm that is being done to you and like the assault that's being done to you, you report it to his friends, his coworkers, the people that are in his community that are like, oh, he would never do that, I've never seen him be violent and stuff like that, whenever they don't know what these people are like outside of work. But whenever you see somebody inside of your work and you get that sort of like relation and that like you see somebody inside of work, that's how you're going to remember them. You would never be able to see, like, if they killed someone, you'd be like, oh my God, I never think that he would kill someone because he was always so friendly at work. When people at work are different people than they are at home or at a restaurant or at the movies or wherever they are, especially everyone is different with whoever they're around.
Yeah, which is what makes the brotherhood that is being like a police officer so dangerous.
Yes.
It is
Because it's
very
just like
dangerous thing
an
because they
echo
have that
chamber.
solidarity and they support each other's wrongs.
Hmm. It's much like an echo chamber where people are just like spewing one thing and there's no disagreements within that whatever they believe. They're like, "Oh, I just busted this guy that had an ounce of weed on him, blah blah blah. Like I got to arrest him and stuff like that." And then these other dudes are like, "Hell yeah, brother, our numbers look better," or whatever it is that they get some type of like inherent benefit to whatever they do, you know? And they can arrest people for certain crimes that then they themselves would get away with if they got pulled over or whatever by someone else. Because they just have to be like, "Hey, I'm a cop." And they're like, "Oh, okay, free to go." You know, like how many police officers do you know that get speeding tickets or get charged with running red lights or get charged with anything like that? And like everybody you know, like I literally was driving home yesterday, maybe, or the other day, and I watched a police officer run a red light. But if
Yeah, I
I were to do
watched a
that,
police officer at a red light turn on his lights so that he could go through the red light and then he turned them off right afterwards. because he didn't want to wait for the light.
Yeah. And I know everybody you know has a story like that where they saw like a police officer speeding down the expressway going faster than the speed limit or doing whatever it is. And I'm sure, yes, I'm sure some of the times they are probably responding to emergencies that they are not even suited to respond to. I'm sure half the time they probably are responding to actual emergencies. But one, I don't trust them to respond to those emergencies to how somebody should actually respond to those emergencies. Because one, they're not trained for that. Two, half the time they cause more problems. There's been so many times where like I have like my mom has called the police on like people and the police just leave. They don't even arrest anybody or do anything or ask anybody to leave. They just come and ask questions and then they leave. That is it. That's happened
Yeah.
more times than I can count.
We had that happen recently here. I had a young woman come banging on the door asking if she could use our phone, that her partner had like battered her, and then the police showed up and they're like, "Well, you don't have a black eye or like any welts or anything from what you said, so we can't really do anything." And that
Yeah.
was it. And you know what? And in these dark romance books, this is how the police act. Like, it's accurate. So sometimes, like, in the
Yes.
comment sections of, like, the reviews, they'll be like, this isn't accurate. Like, the police would have done more. No, they wouldn't. So, like,
That's how you know
these
that
books are
that's like
encompassing.
white that's like rich white women that are reading these books and like identifying with the main character or whatever because they don't actually understand how the police act because they've never had the need to actually call the police to do something for them. Because you look at the people that call the police inherently more are poor people that are dealing with probably domestic violence, mental health, the things that they if they had more money like within their communities and things like that they would not have to worry about calling the police for those things. If it's a mental health crisis where I mean just the other day in our neighborhood we had some young boy that was wearing like a school uniform running around trying to get into people's houses and stuff like that, but then like people like posted their ring camera and it's obviously like a child going through like some sort of like he was very scared. And I don't know what happened to him, but people are like, "Oh, I wish he would have showed up on my doorstep so I could shoot him." Like, that's the
That's a weird thing to
type of
say.
place that I live in. No, isn't it? And then it's like, this is the type of area that I live in where because people know how useless the police are, how often do they get called? You know?
Yeah,
Like,
I
literally
feel that.
just last night, like, I have to have Tyler send you the ring camera footage, but just last night, there was, like, a couple arguing, one of our neighbors outside arguing, screaming at each other, and then they don't call the police or anything, they just drive away. Like, that's how it gets solved here. Like, very rarely do we actually have the police coming into our neighborhood.
You know, I was thinking about like side note is do you remember was it the earlier this year when the dudes were coming on and they were saying like, "Oh, like dark romance is bad. All
Just for
women are reading as
gooners.
porn." And
Yeah.
then everyone's like, "No, no, we're reading it. It's not real." And then like this comes out.
Yeah.
And I just
It's
don't
like you're
think it's a
proving these
good
people
look.
right.
I
Yeah.
also wonder how it's like a
Like, I
hashtag
tried to
feminism
defend you,
thing.
dark romance girlies. Like, we
But
tried
like
to defend you.
how is this like a feminist action to be like, oh, he's so hot, like I would like climb
You're
that
not
like a tree when
reclaiming
like these
anything.
women they were murdered. They were so violently
That's
killed
why
by
I
this
am
man.
saying that these women that were commenting on that must have never experienced, like, any type of violence in their life from a man. Because there's no way that I feel like any woman that I know that have experienced, like, violence from men would sit there and comment at a man at his sentencing hearing, or I don't think it was a sentence, whatever, like, him finding out that he was guilty or whatever, like, they would be thirsting over him.
It's
And
fucking
it's
gross.
just
Like
like the
if you
Ted
think like
Bundy.
this, oh my god, yes.
It's
It's
literally,
that's
it's
why
just
I
like Ted
put in here
Bundy.
like the dark romance book talk meets like true crime book talk, like where people were making like the romance shit for Ted Bundy or who whatever other.
Whatever, like, conventionally attractive white man is going around, and, you can see how, like and that's the thing is that, like, one thing that, like, we haven't really talked about a lot, but I do notice a lot of people, especially online, talking about, like, pretty privilege. Like, if you are a conventionally attractive person, you do get more lenience with society and things like that, because I guarantee you, if this was, like, a ugly little white dude, like, skinny, short, whatever, He probably would not be getting everyone would be like, "Oh my god, how disgusting. Can't believe men would do this." Whatever it should be, all men that commit violence against women should be berated and beaten themselves.
Straight to the gulag and they can face
I,
the wall.
but
I
I
don't think
think
this is like a redeemable thing. And this is to clarify that like we don't support the
the death
death
penalty.
penalty under our current like system of
Mhm.
punishment because it disproportionately affects generally
People of
it's people
colors.
that haven't done anything really
Usually
like
it's not even
it's
as
five
violent.
yeah, it's like black men are like 5 times more likely to get the death penalty than like a white man who's gonna like get let off.
Yeah.
So like these are like very important disparities to keep into consideration. That is not we aren't supporting the death penalty. We're just critiquing overall reaction and reception of this clip of Wade Wilson at
Mhm.
his trial.
And one of
So it's
the thing
just
is that even if he like they add like the jurors or whatever say they suggest the death penalty or whatever for this guy, is that even if they do the death penalty for this man, he will probably live another 30 years.
yeah, death penalty trials are very expensive in terms of like
Very
dollars
long.
and very long. They're
Is
very
that like
wasteful in those
because
resources.
just because he was found guilty now and they do the death penalty, do you know how many appeals and things like that? And I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know like what his class like looks like or like his family life or anything like that. But I'm assuming if he had I mean he has like tattoos on his face, but I'm assuming that like he probably has some type of money because he looked I saw the clip of him like getting told that he was guilty and he looked surprised that he was found guilty. So I'm assuming he must have either severe disillusionment where he's got mental health issues where he obviously doesn't know what's going on, where he has like psychopathic tendencies or sociopathic tendencies. I don't know. I'm not like a psychologist or anything like that. But the fact that you could see in his face where he like kind of like widens his eyes whenever they're like guilty, whatever. And it's like, what do you mean you're surprised that you're found guilty? You killed two women. Did you really think you were going to get away with it?
I just really wish the people in the comments section would read like The Logic of Misogyny by Kate Mann or Women Racing Class by Angela Davis.
Women
You
Racing
guys really
Class is a
need
great read. Like, but then
you
these
need to touch grass
people,
and read something that's
like,
not this
I think
dark
that's the
romance. If that's
problem
all
with
you're
like
reading, that's a problem.
if you're only reading dark romance, I don't think that's healthy for you necessarily because that's how you become disillusioned to actually violent criminals. Where I'd argue half the time in these dark romances, like, yes, they're like bad people, but they're usually redeemed because they're like in the fiction, they're attacking worse people or people that are actually causing harm, which is why like Dexter is like so compelling as a villain because Dexter himself in the TV show is a villain because he murders people, but he's redeemed in the fact that he's murdering people that are actually guilty, but they just get off on whatever charges or the police don't catch them or whatever else. And so I think the reason why like Dexter and he ends up having like a romance with the character and stuff like that. And people really root for that romance because it's not like he's violent towards women or actual like people that don't deserve the violence. He's violent towards people that deserve it. And that's what happens in all of these dark romance books. No, I have personally, I don't know if you've read like a dark romance where they're necessarily like if they're being violent, it's like not unwarranted violence. It's usually warranted whether it's gang violence or like them reacting to something that happened to them or like, you know, like where it's like
I have recently like there is this whole like dark romance like quote unquote dark romance books that are coming out that are violence against women, but I do think it's just horror erotica that's getting published under the label as dark romance, where like they're just like sexually assaulting the female main character and like they're garbage humans. And I don't
yes.
know if that's just in the natural evolution that's to take place because people are like, no, I need darker, I need more. I just, it's too much. I
I don't
think
know. I don't and that's the thing too, where it's because I'm not in the dark romance community and anything like that, I don't know. And I've seen a lot of women that actually are in the dark romance communities making videos and them discussing like, hey, this is not okay. Like I understand you like dark romance, but this is actually a violent criminal versus what we read is fiction. Like that's the main thing is something being fiction and not real versus something actually being real and happening and affecting real human beings.
And I don't think authors should be having to come on here to try to, like, check the people that are reading their content. Like,
Yeah.
that's excessive. It's crazy that it just come to this point. Our timer is up, by the way. I don't know
Okay.
if you wanna
I
wrap it
don't know
up.
if we have anything else
No, that was a
specifically we
good
have to
little
say. I
spew.
do think we ended up talking a lot, maybe not necessarily about the guy itself, but I don't think he's somebody that me and Mariah want to be giving a platform to discuss. Like I think we both did very surface level research because it's not like we're trying to see like what his defense is or anything like that. Like I think this man deserves to be rotting in prison for what he's done because that's obviously, but that also doesn't mean that I don't think he doesn't deserve like a psychologist or medication to help him with obviously his mental health issues that he has to have because I don't think people are inherently violent to other people unless they have something wrong mentally.
I just hope that the families get closure and peace, and I
Yes.
can only imagine how they feel seeing these comments. I wish people would take that into consideration that, like, those
Yes.
victims, their family members are probably seeing your unhinged comments on these posts, and if you're a real hashtag girls girls or girls girl,
A
take that into
girl's girl.
consideration.
Yeah.
But thank you for listening to this episode. If you have any suggestions for anything you want to see, we always
Us to
put this
talk
at the
about in
end.
our mini
We never
episodes.
get any, but I
No.
listen. We can do more dark romance reviews too. I think that might be relevant. We might have to start doing it just from a media literacy perspective.
I mean, they
Because
are
clearly people
very
are fucking
popular for a
laughing.
reason. I mean, I did start reading a dark romance on my own, so we'll see how that goes. The Predator by Runix is one of my current reads, so we'll see if that goes anywhere. I got like 8 pages in and so far I haven't read any more, but um other than that,
Thanks for
make sure to
listening.
check out next week's episode. We will be discussing the Housemaid trilogy, right?
Yes.
That'll be next week's episode. It's a little confusing because we're also filming that today. So, but other than that, thanks for listening, and I hate men.